it's Mark Ellis, and we got a film-tastic new episode of RT Essentials for you. But first, I'd like to know if this scenario rings a bell. So you're at the cinema watching the hottest action flick of the summer. It's thrilling, it's moving, it's shaking, you're on the edge of your seat, your eyes are glued, not even the obnoxious popcorn chomping behind you, which is probably me, is gonna distract you because this next scene is gonna blow your mind and... wah wah. Ugh, terrible CGI. Well, there goes your attention. I mean, are we supposed to suspend disbelief for something that looks like it was designed on an Etch-a-Sketch? Computer-generated imagery has the power to make or break a scene. If done well, it can transport us to fantastical worlds filled with fire-breathing dragons and 100-foot gorillas. If done poorly, it can ruin the entire movie. So this week, we're calling out the worst CGI in big-budget flicks. It's not like these box office smashes were strapped for cash, and it's not like it was in the 1970s, where if you wanted a shark scene, you had to use an actual shark or build a mechanical one, the latter of which somehow proved to be even more problematic. Get your crackers ready, because it's time to get cheesy. Neo versus the Smiths, The Matrix Reloaded. And up first, we have Neo versus the army of Agent Smiths, aka the Burly Brawl in The Matrix Reloaded. Now, we can all agree that the visual effects in the first Matrix were nothing to laugh about, but for this sequel, writer-directors the Wachowskis had grandiose visions that required a fresh approach. In light of this, Warner Brothers launched ESC Entertainment, a company founded by employees who had formerly worked at Mannix, the visual effects company behind the first Matrix. Starting out with just 10 employees and a handful of computers, ESC began developing technology that had never been used in film or television before. For this specific scene, the Wachowskis wanted the fighting to emulate styles and choreography found in Japanese animation. Special effects supervisor John Gaeta set out to create a ballet that could never be staged in real life. It's an army of clones attacking a flying Keanu Reeves on a playground in a simulated universe. I'd say real life was already out of the question. Since there were hundreds of Agent Smiths attacking at once, actor Hugo Weaving was photographed several times at different locations, and then each of those shots were layered into the scene. Stuntmen were used for the sequences that were too dangerous for Weaving, and his head was digitally imposed on their bodies. Luckily, they're all wearing the same suit, so it's hard to tell whose body is his and whose isn't. But if you're lactose intolerant, look out, because things are about to get dangerously cheesy. Neo pulls a pole out of the ground and wields it as a weapon, warding off the attacking Smith clones. Because this shot is so far-fetched, every single element was computerized. The actors, the set, the lighting, the camera movements. This new technique was part of universal capture, a process developed by ESC that samples and stores the facial details and expressions of actors using a multi-camera setup and photogrammetric techniques. Photogrammetric, which sounds like 9 different classes I took in high school. With that data and a sophisticated algorithm, ESC was able to digitally create shots that would otherwise be impossible on a real camera with real actors in a real setting. The result is an action sequence that looks more like a video game than a film. Some Matrix theorists have excused this display as being intentional, saying that it's meant to look simulated because it's symbolic of a glitch in the Matrix. But that kind of sounds like when Pee-wee is trying to show off on his bike, wipes out, then exclaims, "I meant to do that." Sure you did, pal. This is still some seriously impressive technology that changed the game for visual effects in cinema. Roger Ebert even wrote that the Burly Brawl is one of 3 great set pieces in the movie. So, way to go, The Matrix Reloaded. Pay no mind to Entertainment Weekly when they called you one of the 25 worst sequels ever made. Tsunami Surfing, Die Another Day. Next up is the tsunami surfing scene in Die Another Day, a James Bond installment directed by Lee Tamahori and starring Pierce Brosnan. This is one of those cinematic moments where you just have to wonder how it made it all the way to the big screen. Even the basic description sounds ridiculous. Bond is whipping across an unstable glacier in a rocket-propelled car. He flies off the edge and is now dangling on the icy cliff. Are you with me so far? The glacier then breaks apart and plummets into the ocean, causing a tsunami. Having managed to create a surfboard using a metal piece of the rocket car, he surfs the tsunami and propels himself onto solid ground, narrowly escaping the massive wave and his certain demise. I would have done the same thing myself. Most filmmakers would have realized this sequence was too ambitious and opted for something less reliant on computer imagery. But Tamahori went for it. The result is cheesier than Swiss fondue. The glaciers and waves look worse than PlayStation 1 graphics, and the shots of Bond surfing look cartoonish at best. Critics and audiences ripped this film apart. James Berardinelli of RealReviews.net called it a train wreck of an action film with CGI work that is an order of magnitude worse than anything ever seen in a major motion picture. Even former Bond actor Roger Morris said that he thought it just went too far. Invisible cars and dodgy CGI footage? Please. With a budget of $142 million and a 2002 release date, which is 3 years after The Matrix, there was no excuse, Mr. Bond. The Scorpion King, The Mummy Returns. The Scorpion King is Dwayne Johnson's villainous character in The Mummy Returns, writer-director Stephen Sommers' sequel to The Mummy. Once again, we have something that falls into the how the heck did this make it to the big screen category? Was there anyone in charge of quality control on this film? Even Burger King has someone double-checking the Whoppers before they go out. Extra cheese? You got it. The specific scene in this firing line happens towards the end of the movie, when Brendan Fraser's character Rick O'Connell is fighting the antagonist Imhotep inside a collapsing pyramid. Imhotep summons the Scorpion King, who is now morphed into a giant half-scorpion, half-man monstrosity, and busts through the door to kill O'Connell. Should be a pretty sensational fight sequence as follows, but it's impossible to see past the true monstrosity at play here, those visual effects. Where do we even begin? The Rock's digitally rendered facial expressions look unnatural and creepy, and with these awkward side smirks. His hair flops in a way that defies the laws of physics, his skin lacks texture, and the shadows and lighting create a disconnect between the subject and his environment. They would have been better off using The Rock's wax figure from Madame Tussauds. Visual effects company and popular YouTube channel, The Corridor Crew, analyzed and fixed this shot in 2019. The video has almost 12 million views and caught the attention of one of the men behind the original monstrosity, Alex Laurent. Laurent worked as a VFX artist on The Mummy Returns and admitted that most of what the Corridor Crew had speculated went wrong with the film was accurate. Laurent recalled that for the Scorpion King's face they used an extremely underdeveloped technique of facial capture and that time constraints didn't allow for proper finessing. The Great Pyramids themselves were built with limited resources, yet we still marvel over their beauty some 4,500 years later. The Mummy Returns is already laughably outdated, and they had $98 million and 21st century technology at their fingertips. Come on, ye kings! Renesmee Growing Up, The Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn, Part 2. Fast forward a decade and we have The Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn Part 2, directed by Bill Condon and featuring CG from Lola VFX and Tippett Studios. In case anyone is unfamiliar with Stephenie Meyer's Twilight, it's set in a world consisting of vampires and werewolves, often at odds and warring. So it's a little shocking that the most disturbing creature in Breaking Dawn Part 2 is actually a baby. Renesmee is the half-vampire, half-mortal offspring of protagonists Edward Cullen and Bella Swan. Oh, they got together, good! The goal was to have her appear like a normal infant, but one that emotionally and physically matures at a rapid rate due to her, vampire genes. To achieve this, Lola VFX used a complex process, compiling photographs of over 30 real-life babies and using actress Kristen Stewart's actual toddler photos as inspiration. The result? Well, it's a nightmare-inducing, unrealistic, computerized baby that ruins what should have been a touching moment. In another scene, Renesmee stands against a wall, growing in a flash while having her height measured. Lola implemented a similar technique here, taking a digitally manipulated version of actress Mackenzie Foy's face and editing onto the bodies of toddlers and children at various ages. The same face aging technology used to help find missing children was utilized in this shot. Unfortunately, the distressing display didn't help anyone. Even Condon recognized how awful this turned out, stating that the CG half-human, half-vampire baby was a disaster, but that it taught him valuable lessons he would take with him while directing the live-action adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. By the way, the budget for Breaking Dawn Part 2 was $136.2 million. Come on, Twilight, next time just be like American Sniper and use a prop baby. Mutt and the Monkey Swings, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Next, we have Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal... Oh, God, I can't stand this scene. The fourth installment in the legendary Indiana Jones franchise, directed by Steven Spielberg. Since the story is set in 1957, 19 years after the previous film, it would have made sense to keep CG effects to a minimum in order to maintain consistency. Prior to production, Spielberg himself even stated that was his intention. So how did we end up with over 450 CG shots in the final edit? It's possible the limitations were only realized once production was underway, and certain elements proved to be too ambitious to achieve naturally. Take this one sequence where Mutt Williams, Indiana's probably son, is swinging through the jungle with a troop of monkeys, very Tarzan-like. As this is happening, a dangerous car chase is underway, with vehicles teetering on the edge of a high cliff. Again, this is one of those scenes that already sounds crazy on paper, and someone like Spielberg should be attuned to the potential for disaster. Instead of opting for a safer, more likely scenario, visual effects supervisor Pablo Hellman and Industrial Light and Magic created a virtual jungle using green screen and computer animation. Keep in mind, this was 2008, and Hellman had already received an Oscar nod for his work on Spielberg's 2005 War of the Worlds. So this felt like one giant leap backward. The colors are strange and fuzzy, the subjects and background don't blend at all, the lighting is abnormal, characters are driving full speed in convertible Jeeps, but there's no wind effect. The monkeys look fake, which is the worst sin of anything, and in an environment this dynamic, the green screen has got to pull its weight, otherwise there's going to be a noticeable disconnect between what is real and what is not. With a budget of $185 million, it's hard to excuse this display, especially from the mechanical shark guy himself, Mr. Spielberg. Superman's upper lip, Justice League.
If I win, Bruce said something about you having to take us all to brunch?
Oh, see, now that's cold. That's a betrayal. I feel stung by that. Okay, but if I win, I get to tell everyone.
Deal. Which coast?
Relying on computers is appropriate when pushing the boundaries of the physical world or stretching the imagination to craft a shot that would otherwise be impossible. But 2017's Justice League might have one of the silliest usages of CGI in history. It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's not Superman. Well, actually it is Superman, but specifically his upper lip. Hello, come on in. Welcome to Mustache Gate. When actor Henry Cavill initially wrapped shooting on Justice League, he immediately grew a mustache for his role in Mission Impossible 6. Unbeknownst to him at the time, Justice League would require extensive reshoots, which would prove to be problematic because, well, I don't know if y'all knew this, Superman doesn't have a mustache, especially one as prominent as Cavill's in MI6. So there's already so much footage of a fresh-faced Cavill in Justice League, we had to get rid of the mustache for the reshoots, right? Well, it seems simple enough. You buy a razor and you shave that baby off. Easy peasy, if you don't mind Paramount Pictures litigiously coming after you. That's because Cavill was contractually obligated to keep the mustache while filming MI6, and the powers that be would not budge. Warner Brothers even offered to create and pay for a digital mustache that Cavill could wear in MI6, still no dice. Justice League's visual effects team was forced to digitally remove Cavill's stash in post-production. And because the mouth is the most difficult feature to digitally render, the result is a noticeably fake, weird upper lip that doesn't blend well at all with the rest of his face. This became one of the primary talking points and criticisms of the film, which is a shame considering it's one of the most expensive productions in history. A $300 million budget, an all-star cast, skillful writing and direction, and the phantom mustache stole the show. Even the Justice League themselves couldn't save this disaster.
Agreed.
Jabba the Hutt, Star Wars: A New Hope, Special Edition.
One of these twerps. Han, maki cheese. Sa tahuno koltimalia. Yumid bibliotisa. Son spastica alwano. Yana da puno.
Look, Jabba, even I get bored at sometimes. You think I had a choice? But I got a nice, easy charter.
A long time ago in a theater not all that far away, George Lucas released his iconic space opera Star Wars, the first film in a mega franchise that continues to churn out box office smashes. Many of the special effects in the original film still hold up to this day, which is remarkable considering the limited budget and technology available way back in the 70s. The slew of naysaying studio execs probably didn't help much either. Lucas formed his own visual effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, in 1975 and began working on Star Wars out of a warehouse in Van Nuys. His team pioneered a visual effects method of digital motion control photography, which created the illusion of size using small models and moving cameras. This was pretty innovative at the time and set the standard for countless films that followed. 30 years later, Lucas re-released Star Wars, taking advantage of more modern technologies and inserting new CG characters and settings into the original frames. Though some critics felt these changes were improvements, the vast majority didn't approve, and you can kind of see why. Check out this one scene where Jabba the Hutt and Han Solo converse near the Millennium Falcon. Jabba looks digital and out of place. The scene was originally shot way back in the 70s with Irish actor Declan Mulholland playing Jabba, and Lucas had the intention of replacing him with a stop-motion Jabba. But time and budget didn't allow for this, so the scene was cut. You can even see where Han walked closely behind Mulholland, which wasn't originally a problem, but Jabba the Hutt now has a tail, so the VFX team had to simulate Han stepping on said tail and causing this cringeworthy reaction. Enjoy.
I think I had a choice.
Still unsatisfied, Lucas attempted to fix this scene again in 2004, and somehow kind of made it worse. Maybe you should have just left it out of the picture. Everyone was perfectly fine with not seeing Jabba until Return of the Jedi. Many fans wish they could use the Force to unsee this. Green Lantern suit, Green Lantern.
I feel your fear growing. You will be dead soon.
Bird is dead. Black is
And when you're gone, I'll destroy everything you ever...
Martin Campbell's superhero action thriller Green Lantern stars Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, Peter Sarsgaard, Mark Strong, Angela Bassett, and Tim Robbins. The film was distributed by Warner Brothers and was intended to kick off the DC Extended Universe franchise. Well, it seems promising enough, especially with that gargantuan production budget of $200 million. What could possibly go wrong with all of that? The CGI haters were angry that day, my friends, especially about Hal Jordan's silly green suit. Campbell decided to use an entirely computer-generated costume instead of a practical one that could be combined with visual effects. It was a bold decision, considering this isn't just one shot of a creature or a fleeting fight scene. We're talking the main character's uniform that they wear for the majority of the film, and literally at all the critical moments. Serious disaster potential if they don't pull it off, then well, they didn't pull it off. Green Lantern's mood and energy constantly changed, and his suit is meant to magically reflect that. He's often conjuring CG objects and weapons as well, so the costume had to be animated for a lot of the shots anyways. In a sense, the suit is its own character. This was the explanation given by Campbell and the visual effects team. Even Green Lantern's mask is CG'd, which doesn't particularly track well. Critics and audiences couldn't see past the unintentionally bad CGI, and the film was considered a flop. Warner Brothers canceled all plans for a sequel, and Ryan Reynolds himself has admitted that he regrets taking the role. Sorry, Green Lantern, visual effects just weren't your strong suit. Air Force One crash. Air Force One. Harrison Ford must have had a bad CGI stipulation in his contract because this is his third movie on our list. In Air Force One, Ford plays United States President James Marshall. It's a terrific thriller with dynamite performances, and the fact that it's almost entirely set on a plane is impressive. Ford also delivers one of the most powerful one-liners in cinematic history.
Get off my plane.
It's so classic. But you know what isn't classic? That CGI plane crash at the end. Do you remember playing Microsoft's Flight Simulator on your PC back in the 90s? Kinda looks like that, except much worse. Not what you'd expect from a star-studded feature with an $85 million production budget. Legendary cinematographer Richard Eblin, who also worked on Star Wars, was the effects supervisor on Air Force One. His team crafted several intricate models of the presidential plane and shot using a red screen and backlight technique to extract the backgrounds. These sequences are seen throughout the film and still look exquisite, which is why there's even more of a disparity when the cheesy plane has the crash. Edlin admits that director Wolfgang Peterson was so fixated on the brightness of the plane's trailing lights, constantly reshooting and editing that one element, that the team ran out of time. The result is a composite that, according to Edlund, was less than 80% of where they wanted to get it. Now, sure, it's 1997, so CGI technology was nowhere near what it is today, but remember, those expertly rendered dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, they were already wreaking havoc 4 years prior. If you can bring a creature that went extinct 65 million years ago back to life, a plane crash should be no problem. Legolas slays the elephant. Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Last up is The Return of the King, Peter Jackson's final installment in the epic fantasy adventure, The Lord of the Rings. These films feature some of the most extraordinary sequences to ever make the silver screen, skillfully blending live action and visual effects, and often set in breathtakingly beautiful environments. Jackson's instant classics were an awe-inspiring cinematic feat that I'm sure even J.R.R. Tolkien himself would have appreciated. Luckily, Tolkien wasn't around to see a CG Legolas slaying the elephant in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Honestly, this resembles a dated Nintendo game. The elephant lacks proper texture, the colors are all wrong, and the way Legolas moves across the massive creature is comically unnatural, even if you're a mystical elf. It's as if the film cuts to commercial promoting the new Zelda RPG. Once again, we're completely taken out of the moment, which is a shame because who doesn't love a good mid-battle takedown? Jackson was far more reliant on CG in this film than in the two previous, working with visual effects company Weta Digital and using the highly intelligent software Massive. Despite all that cheese, the film won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects and took home the other 10 Oscars it was nominated for. In fact, The Return of the King shares the record for the most Academy Awards won by a single film, and it's the second franchise whose installments have all won Best Visual Effects, the OG Star Wars trilogy being the first. And there you have it, our selections for the worst CGI in big budget movies. Given the rate at which technology advances, I'm sure many of the scenes we know and love today will someday be viewed through these cheese-colored glasses, and we'll need a fresh list of selections. So stay tuned because you won't want to miss out. I'm Mark Ellis, and thanks for watching. And we're not going to forget to take my mustache out, right? Fresh face.